scores of the baseball games. And the first thing I thought was that if Alex played what he talked about on the show, he probably had a good night with San Francisco and Pittsburgh going nuts.
Yes, absolutely. No question about it. And that did happen. So there we have it. By the way, all of the tools that he uses are on awesemo.com. Use the code DEEPERDIVE, one word, when you sign up. I'm going to get all these out of the way early so we can go, boom, 15 games, bam, done. No breaks in between, no intermissions, no stop for reads. Use the promo code DEEPERDIVE, all one word, to get an awesome 50% off your Awesemo Plus subscription when you sign up your first month. 50% off with the promo code DEEPERDIVE, the stack tool, the ownership tool, the projections. I really don't even need to say much more. Just look at his results from yesterday, and I think you'll be impressed enough. Deeper Dive, one word. Hopefully we'll see you over there. And say what's up in the premium Slack chat. When you do, we'll give you the grand tour when we see you in Slack. All right, here we go. 15 games. Let's get it popping. Adam, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Joe Musgrove, Kyle Hendricks. It's one of those weird slates where the mid-range, like the 7-8K range, is kind of a no man's land outside of, one or two guys we'll talk about. But then at the bottom, you've got Musgrove against Chicago, and it's a Chicago team that really only has, outside of Caratini, who isn't, I haven't looked. I doubt he's in the lineup, right? We got Contreras back. Yeah. So only 3 lefties in the lineup. And then you have Ronaldo Lopez facing a righty-heavy Detroit team. He has a 25% K rate against righties. And might I add, Tyler Beede against the highest K team in the league versus righties, and Matt Strahm, of course, against San Francisco. So sometimes these 15-game slates don't give us much pitching at the bottom. There are at least a few options to discuss, and the first game we get to has one of them in Musgrove.
Yeah, no question. I think that he projects a little bit lower than a couple of those guys for me, but at his price tag on DraftKings in particular, not interested on FanDuel or Yahoo. Yahoo, you need the 2 pitchers, but he's still $35 there. But on DraftKings in particular, I can see getting there because, like you said, there are only 3 lefties in the lineup for the Cubs. Musgrove has been better against righties than lefties this season in terms of strikeouts. But also one thing that I mentioned on the Early Bird pod with EMAC last night, I watched Musgrove's last start, and the broadcasters were talking about him having some issues at the beginning of the season because he had off-season hip surgery, having some issues with like his flexibility and just his ability to generate velocity. I don't know if they were speculating or if that was actually an issue he was having, but it is kind of bared out in the numbers. His fastball velocity over his last few starts is higher than it was earlier in the season by a couple of miles per hour. So I think that's a pretty good thing to keep in mind moving forward, is that maybe he was still kind of injured earlier this year, but either way, a 23% strikeout rate against right-handed hitters, a 307 expected WOBA, 162 expected ISO. Not the easiest matchup, but it is a solid park and a good price tag.
How about you, Alex? We've got Hendricks, who, in my opinion, seems a bit overpriced. He's been excellent this year. He's done a phenomenal job of pitching deep into games, but he's also somebody that you're really depending on to go deep because the strikeouts likely won't be there against Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts here about Musgrove and Hendricks?
I agree with Adam that the price tag is appealing for Musgrove on DraftKings. That's the only play here, in my opinion. Hendricks, he hasn't pitched in 2.5 weeks, I think, and I wouldn't have him as a good pick anyway because this Pittsburgh team, obviously the strongest lineup in the league. Josh Bell gonna hit a few more dongs tonight probably, or maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but they just don't strike out a lot, so not a great fantasy spot. On the other side, the Cubs, their lineup today has strikeouts in it about league average, so I think you could take Musgrove, but their run production is supposed to be pretty high. They have a team total of 5.4.
All right. Oh, look at that. With the United States advancing?
It was 2-1 last I saw. They ended up winning.
Yep, they did. All right, cool. I agree with both of you guys. I think Musgrove makes plenty of sense here. He isn't, but Adam, you said you had a couple guys down there projected higher than him. So do I. It doesn't mean I don't think he's viable, though, and I don't think you can't mix and match a few of those guys down at the bottom just based on how cheap they are, right?
Yeah, I'm expecting to kind of live in that price range in tournaments tonight because it's something that I think we mention a lot. When there's like one pitcher down there that gives you a discount but is risky, it's still really easy for that price range, obviously, to just bomb and not help you. But when there's several pitchers, it just lowers the risk. If you're a max entry player of that, it increases the chances of that being the correct roster construction. It's just a matter of, getting to the right one.
Okay. Any hitters, Adam?
Not really. Kyle Schwarber's still affordable, but it is a 15-game slate. This isn't a park where generally I look to spend up too much for hitters. I have respect for Musgrove. I have respect for Hendricks. Like Alex said, Josh Bell's price tag actually come down a bit too, which is nice. But I don't anticipate getting to a whole lot of this game.
All right, let's move on then. Let me go over to you, Alex. Washington and Miami, unless, of course, you want to hit on any more hitters there, which is perfectly fine.
Adam Frazier and Kyle Schwarber look like good cash plays on DraftKings, and Frazier on Yahoo.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Corbin and Zach Gallen here? Corbin is in a good spot. I definitely think lefties are less favorable against Miami than righties, which is not actually, I don't think that. It's true. But at the same time, the Marlins are just such a god-awful team in every other facet of the game outside of maybe the strikeouts versus lefties. But Corbin went 7 one-run innings, 9 Ks against them just last week. And what Josh and I found fascinating today on the Strategy Show, which you can listen to Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, is Corbin's ownership on DraftKings is coming in at 8% right now. He's coming in at 5% on FanDuel, and on our sponsor Yahoo, he's coming in at 30% at $43. So there's definitely something to Bauer and Morton and Boyd, all of them being similarly priced. Corbin and Nola are two guys that are going overlooked entirely. What are your thoughts on Corbin against Miami with this low ownership?
First, I point out on Yahoo, Corbin is $43.
I just mentioned. I got there before you, baby.
That's all right. All right. Well, I thought I was being all like eagle-eyed here, but apparently you put that idea.
You're just not eagle-eared.
So I'll definitely work on that. Yeah, he's a lock on Yahoo Cash. Great play. The thing is, Corbin isn't an ace pitcher. His xFIP on the year is 3.8. He's better in strikeouts than he is in run prevention. This is a great matchup, but Miami has a team total of 4.2, which is higher than you might expect. So I don't think he justifies that 10K plus price tag, but for 43, I like it a lot.
Okay. Adam, pitcher matchup here.
Yeah, pretty much the same spot I'm in. I think Corbin's good, but the strikeout numbers are down this year. His strikeout numbers against righties in particular, he's only at about 24.5%. And Miami's lineup is entirely right-handed tonight. Miami as a team strikes out at in the bottom half of the league against left-handed pitching. I know Corbin's gone out and put up 2 monster games against Miami, and there's no reason he can't do it again. But on this slate where you have Charlie Morton against the Orioles, you have Matt Boyd, who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, going against the White Sox. You have Trevor Bauer. You have some less expensive guys in good spots or with good strikeout stuff or both. There's no lack of pitching here, and so it's not that I think like Corbin's a bad play. It's just I think he's less of a good play than several other pitchers on sites that are not Yahoo.
Yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, felt the same way last time. And, to be fair, it ended up going with more Mike Minor, but Corbin had a really good game, and I just wasn't really there. But now it's a 15-game slate, so it's definitely different. And there's a lot around there in that similar price range that's just really appealing. Adam, what do you make of hitters here? Anything at all?
Not a whole lot. Starlin Castro as a point per dollar guy is really, really cheap as a second base option, but obviously not the most power there. On the other side, kind of interested in the Nats as a stack because I do think that Zach Gallen has good stuff, but I think it's a little bit. For one, the Nats, just have a good offense, but also this is his second consecutive start against them. And in his last start, he started out really, really well, and then third time through the order ran into some issues. It wouldn't be shocking if he's just a young pitcher that kind of has trouble adjusting once hitters have seen him a couple times. And, now you have him getting out of Miami, going into Washington, and facing, a good Nats team that just saw him.
Alex, is there any hitting opportunities here that you like? I mean, it's not in Miami, which is at least decent. Nationals Park has got temperatures of 94 degrees at first pitch. So does anybody stand out to you here?
Yeah, I have to agree. That 94 number is pretty significant. It's too bad Strasburg's not on the mound because that would be a lock spot for Miami. But we got Corbin. I haven't done any research on his above 80-degree pitching splits. But as Adam mentioned, Castro is a good price. A lot of the Nationals bats are really well priced on DraftKings. On FanDuel and Yahoo, they're a bit more expensive. But yeah, I like Gallen and Corbin as pitchers, so I'm not like super enthusiastic about this stack, but I think it's a good spot.
Yeah, me too. The super hot temperatures definitely sway me a little bit. Aside from that, like if this was in Miami, probably wouldn't have as much interest. Let's move on then. Toronto and Boston. David Price and Thornton. Adam, I had mentioned to Josh earlier today on the strategy show that when I get to some of these guys priced in the like high 9K low or high 8K low 9K range, Wheeler, I was surprised to see was actually garnering some ownership here. Obviously Paxton is, but I mean Wheeler 15% on DraftKings, 21% on FanDuel. That to me did seem a little bit weird, but to each his own. David Price does stand out to me as a guy who is 4% projected ownership on DraftKings at 9,300, 3% on Yahoo, and he's going completely overlooked for a lot of guys surrounding him. But it's still a Toronto team that strikes out at like the 7th highest clip versus lefties. And while they do have some power, they're also a volatile offense. I personally have some interest in Price just because he's projected to be completely unowned. You have interest in either pitcher here?
That's pretty much where I'm at with Price as well. I started to write him up in the deep dive today and then ended up just making him an honorable mention because I couldn't really come up with reasons that he was a better play than guys like Paxton or Flaherty. But the ownership will probably bear that out as well, which makes him appealing in tournaments because we know that Toronto does give you some strikeouts. We know that Price has been really good this season. He has one of the best xFIPs on the slate. He's in the top 5 in strikeout percentage on the slate as well. So certainly a guy that if he's going to actually be 3 or 4% owned in tournaments, I wouldn't mind being overweight on, but not a guy where I expect to be coming in at like 30% or anything like that.
No, of course not. And the good thing is you don't need to with that ownership. He's striking righties out at 29%, the same as James Paxton, which is, and he's only walking 6% of batters. He has been very good. Kind of a recurring theme that we've discussed on this show. He's flown under the radar. Alex, do you have any interest in Price? I don't imagine you have much Thornton here, but any interest in David Price? And if not, we can go straight into Boston bats or any bats.
I think he's like fringe of playable, but Toronto's lineup's actually pretty good today. So I don't really see it as an excellent spot.
What about hitters?
I think the hitters in this game are really viable on both sides. So more on Boston's side. Toronto is like contrarian play, but bets on DraftKings and FanDuel is really exceptional. I mean, this guy gets on base almost 40% of the time, and he steals and hits for power. So, like, you gotta love it, especially that he's not like one of the highest priced players on the slate. So I think that he's a really good individual play. Martinez is always underpriced. These two guys are gonna be popular tonight, so you're not gonna get a huge edge by rostering them, but I like them a lot. And then on DraftKings, the whole Boston stack is well priced. On Yahoo, Toronto looks like they have some really good values, especially Justin Smoke batting 4th at $8. So I think you can stack up Toronto as well as kind of a contrarian play, but they might be the opposite of the anti-optimizer play where you just get some good values in there and then some really expensive pitchers and it doesn't do a lot for your chances of winning.
Adam, what are your thoughts on bats? Obviously, Boston with a pretty high total against Thornton.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. Thornton has been much better against righties than lefties this year. I think Rafael Devers really stands out as a good third base option, especially if people are going to go to Bregman and Arenado in Coors Field. You can get Devers probably a little bit lower ownership. But the price tags on Betts, Martinez, Bogarts, Benintendi, they're all really, really appealing. Jackie Bradley's still really cheap as a left-handed bat against Thornton. And then on the other side, once again, Vlad Guerrero is just inexpensive for a guy with the amount of power that he has. It doesn't really matter to me how he's done so far in the majors. There's not really a question that he's going to be a good hitter, and getting him at this price point is advantageous. You get, a cheap Randall Grichuk as well. So some one-offs from Toronto, I think, just, hoping that Price makes a mistake to one of the power bats. And then Boston as a full stack is pretty affordably priced.
Okay. Anything else here, Adam or Alex, before we move on to the next one?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. Alex, Charlie Morton, Adrian Wojciechowski. Morton is right now expected to be very popular, and I think for good reason. Another guy that I don't want to say has flown under the radar, but, just look at all of his numbers, and everything will basically return impressive results. He's got a 30% strikeout rate this season. It is one of the highest on the slate. His swinging strike rate, 13.4%. Called plus swinging is the highest on the slate overall at 33.3. He's just done a very good job of missing bats, but also limiting runs and preventing home runs as well. I believe he's allowed only 7 long balls on the season. Where are you at with Morton, who is, of course, going to be pretty chalky against the Orioles, who also have the lowest total on the slate?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors aligning that make Morton really appealing. The strikeout numbers have been great. The team total on the opposing team is really low. And then the Orioles lineup strikes out more than average. So I think that you gotta like it a lot. The price tag, I think, is just about fair on each site. He's one of the higher priced pitchers that you'll see. So I think that you can definitely play him if you want to get some cheap stacks in there.
All right. Oh, did I say Adrian? Is that why you were laughing at me?
Yeah, I was laughing. You called him Adrian Wojciechowski
instead of Asher. Why?
Well,
why?
yeah, and like Woj.
Oh, is that why I said it?
Well, when you said it, I was like, that sounds right, but I know it's not. And then I realized why.
That's why I didn't, dude. I never even thought about that, but it makes sense. That name is like, tattooed into my mind.
Right.
Asher Wojciechowski. What are your thoughts here on the pitching matchup, Adam? Obviously, one side of it.
Yeah, just one side of it. But yeah, love Charlie Morton on FanDuel and on DraftKings. Much, much less interested on Yahoo, where he's $57. And there's just a ton of opportunity cost to paying all the way up for him. But there's a lot to like here. The biggest issue with Morton as far as paying up for him in DFS is that he tends to be a little bit more limited than a lot of the expensive pitchers. He walks guys, and that can drive up his pitch count. But the Orioles have one of the lowest walk percentages against right-handed pitching, one of the highest strikeout percentages against right-handed pitching. They're not a good offense overall. This game's in Tampa Bay. There are 7 lefties in the Baltimore lineup, and going back to last season, Morton has struck out 34% of lefties, about 31.5% so far this season. So if anything, it gives him a little bit more strikeout upside. I don't really have anything not to like about Morton here, so I expect he'll be one of my highest owned pitchers on DraftKings and FanDuel.
You would certainly think so. What about Tampa Bay bats against old Asher Wojciechowski?
Yeah, give me all the Tampa Bay bats you can. Getting close to a 6 implied run total in Tropicana is pretty tough to do. Wojciechowski doesn't really have anything about him that is a redeeming quality. He doesn't have anything that makes him seem like he's going to be good. And on top of that, you're getting really inexpensive pricing on Tampa Bay. Austin Meadows, 4,400 on DraftKings. I believe he's 11 on Yahoo. Brandon Lau is inexpensive. Tommy Pham, Avisail Garcia, G-Man Choi, they're all pretty cheap bats. And then on Yahoo and DraftKings, where you need a catcher, you get Mike Zunino at the minimum on Yahoo. You get him at 2,600 on DraftKings. He's certainly a flawed hitter, but he does have a ton of power facing a pitcher in Wojciechowski who doesn't have great strikeout stuff. So I really like Tampa Bay here, top to bottom.
Yeah, so do I. And, Meadows was like $8,000 not more than a few weeks ago. Now he's seen his price come down pretty dramatically. Pretty much the entirety of this offense has come down to a very reasonable price point, which should certainly inflate ownership, Alex, but they are affordably priced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the prices are ridiculous. I have them as about a 20% greater than average value across the three sites. So you're going to get a really high projection with this team. I'm just concerned that it'll be a little high owned for my taste as well.
Okay. Do you have any interest in the? I'm assuming no interest in Baltimore bats, but I must ask because we cover every team here on the Deeper Dive.
Well, maybe if it was a 4-game slate.
Yeah, maybe. All right, stick with you, Alex. We've got Tanner Roark and Chase Anderson, a really sexy pitching matchup here between two studs at Great American. In all seriousness, though, this feels like a spot where you could see a lot of runs. Again, 90 degrees at Great American in Cincinnati, and if there's one thing about Tanner Roark that stands out to me, it's he's had a pretty good season, but lefties. I mean, the numbers he has against lefties are pretty alarming if you're, a Tanner Roark fan. He's got an 8.9% swinging strike rate, a 223 expected ISO, 396 xWOBA, and even his actual numbers, 199 ISO, 381 WOBA. These aren't very good numbers for Tanner Roark. And now he's got to go up against the likes of Grandal and Yelich and Moustakas and Thames, four lefties in the top 5 of the lineup. Are you interested in either pitcher here? And if not, let's go straight into bats, and then I'll get to Adam.
Yeah, conditions are good for bats here. Roark is just kind of an average pitcher, and his prices are a little bit too high. I'm interested in Anderson only on DraftKings, though, because he's just kind of like an average pitcher, too. But his price tag is 5.3K, which is way lower than your average pitcher. It's not a spot where it's going to be easy to limit runs, but if he manages to do that, he could turn in a really nice performance for that price.
Adam, talk to me about both sides of this.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm with Alex as far as just Anderson as a price play. He's a guy that you can certainly throw into that group of Musgrove and Beatty and Reynaldo Lopez that we talked about. But I do think this is probably like the worst lineup for him the Reds could have run out there. He's been a reverse splits pitcher for most of his career, and this year's been no exception. He has been able to strike righties and lefties out, but he's giving up a ton of power to right-handed bats once again. And the Reds ran out basically a lineup that they would use against left-handed pitching. They have Senzel leading off instead of Winker. The only lefties in the lineup are Votto and Jeanette, who both are good hitters. You have right-handed power with Senzel, Suarez, Puig, and then right-handed hitters with Iglesias, Irvin, and Farmer. But I think about as tough a spot as the Reds could have put Anderson in. So it makes me like Cincinnati a bit more than I would have had they run out a different lineup.
What are your thoughts on the Milwaukee bats? Like I just set the table on this a second ago. The numbers the splits that Roark has against lefties this year really aren't pretty. As a matter of fact, his xFIP is 6. So that's not great. Oh, and a 26% ground ball rate. Those things don't seem like a recipe for success against Yelich and Moose and Grandal and such.
No, right there with you. He's getting absolutely lit up by lefties. His strikeout percentage is 9 percentage points lower against lefties than it is against righties. His expected WOBA is 135 points higher. His expected ISO is like 150 points higher. Just really getting blasted by lefties. Now you have 4 power lefties in the top 5 of the lineup for Milwaukee. And then you also have right-handed power with guys like Braun and Keston Hiura. So it's not like the righties are easy outs, and the lefties just clearly have the advantage here.
Yeah, I agree. Alex?
I think the bats are decent here. One spot that's really jumping off the page at me is the Reds on FanDuel. Just every single batter in the lineup is super cheap, and they have a team total of 5.5, so you gotta like that. The ownership will be pretty high though, so that's a team I'll look to a lot in cash probably. Eugenio Suarez is just super cheap on every site. On Yahoo, we have him projected for 34% ownership at $10, so that's a really good cash play. Milwaukee, I kind of like as a more contrarian play because they're priced up, and I think people won't gravitate towards them as much as maybe they should.
Okay. We move on. New York Mets, New York Yankees. Adam, Zach Wheeler, and Paxton. I mentioned I was surprised to see the ownership on Wheeler, more so just because there are several guys around him that I like more. But it is there right now. He is projected for ownership, even though And look, he's great. He goes deep in the games. He definitely has some longevity out there. But I mean, you're still talking about a Yankees team that continuously makes pitchers pay. I guess it has to do with all the righties, but there are still 4 lefties. Well, 3 lefties because you have Paxton. Either way, what are your thoughts here on Paxton and Wheeler? Let's start with Wheeler first and break this one down.
I don't have a ton of interest in Wheeler. I get that he's a good pitcher, but there's a ton of pitching on this slate. I don't feel like I need to take a pitcher against the Yankees.
That's where I'm at.
Right. And it's not like we're getting a discount. It would be one thing if we were getting like an $8,000 Wheeler. But if I look at my projections, I have Wheeler projected to be fine, but I have, guys like Jack Flaherty and David Price to be very, very similar. James Paxton to be better. Matt Strahm in the same category, so It's just no real reason for me to get to Wheeler, especially if we are projecting him to get ownership. I've seen tweets today from other sites talking about him in a positive light as well. So, maybe he really does get that ownership that we're projecting right now. I just don't see the need to pay up for a guy against the Yankees on this slate.
Yeah, it's really tough for me to grasp too. Alex, do you have any insight on why Wheeler's projected to get 15% on DraftKings and I think 21% on Yahoo? What's he priced on Yahoo? He's at 38. There you could convince me that it's viable enough. But 95 on DraftKings seems a bit rich for my blood.
Yeah, I think Adam hit the nail on the head. It's just that people are hyping him up today. I don't think it's like a great spot. Like the Yankees lineup's not as good with Stanton out of, on the injured list, but still. And they have the pitcher slot because it's interleague. So it's considerably weaker than we're used to, but I don't know if that's enough to really compensate for the rest of the lineup. I'm much more interested in Paxton, who's been having a really rough go. But my rule of thumb there is if sportsbooks are willing to take action on it, his strikeouts, I saw DraftKings Sportsbook had a line of 6.6 with juice on the over, so I think I'm just willing to kind of proceed as if he's totally healthy. And the price tag is even lower than Wheeler on all 3 sides, tied on Yahoo. And the Mets are a much weaker team. They have a much lower run total, so I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, so do I. I will say, though, that Pete Alonso is a very interesting option here. It's tough because first base is so deep, but Pete Alonso against lefties has been outrageously good, like insanely good.
201 WRC plus.
201 WRC plus, and I think he has a WOBA and ISO both approaching 500.
Well, yeah. If you like Pete Alonso, you're gonna like my cash play of Robinson Cano.
I don't.
You don't? Okay. Well, it's cheap.
Because Paxton will give up some power to righties, and Alonso, I don't know. Adam, he is just crushing lefties.
He's insanely good.
Yeah.
At everything. The Mets as a whole this year have been really good against lefties. And if you actually look at the individual bats, I expect it to come down. I don't expect this lineup to actually be 20% better than average against left-handed pitching. But Jeff McNeil so far in small sample size in his career has been very, very good at holding his own against lefties. Alonso has been really good. Wilson Ramos has always been good. So is Frazier. Rosario is starting to pick it up a little bit. So it's not like it's a cakewalk for Paxton, but what really stands out to me is just the price tag. You're talking about a pitcher that has the 3rd highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Boyd and Morton at, really, really cheap pricing across the industry. So there's some room for him to give up, a home run or two as long as there's not a bunch of guys on base, and he should be able to pick up strikeouts. It's not, I wouldn't call it a safe spot, but I think that the salary is just way cheaper than it should be for his upside.
Yeah, no question. No question. Alex, anything else to add on this game to talk hitters? Because you haven't really got to hitters yet. What bats do you like, if any, here?
On DraftKings, the Yankees are coming in as good value and low ownership, so I think you could make a really nice play there. But on FanDuel and Yahoo, they're priced much higher.
Adam, any additional thoughts on hitters before we move on?
Nope.
All right, let's do it. Making good timing, boys.
One additional thought: DJ LeMahieu is apparently one of the best hitters in the game now, according to his price tag.
Oh, it really is insane. It is insane. He is, more expensive than, name almost any player, and he's probably more expensive than him. It's crazy. But I digress. Not really. I'm going forward. Philadelphia and Atlanta. Alex, Aaron Nola, Dallas Keuchel. Nola's last 2 starts have been brilliant. 15 innings, one earned run, 20 Ks with double-digit strikeouts in both of them. He's definitely been all over the map this season. Home runs had been an issue. But if there's one thing about him that stands out, and because I don't really know where I'm at on Nola. He is cheap on some sites, though, so I think we can discuss it. What's interesting about him is he can go up against teams that don't swing and miss a lot and still get quality strikeout totals because he leads the league in called strikeouts, leads the league in called strike rate, and has the ability just to manipulate the ball wherever he wants it to go and get those type of numbers you're looking for. But he is very expensive on DraftKings today. The Atlanta Braves are obviously a very good baseball team, but elsewhere, maybe there's a discussion to be had. What are your thoughts on Nola and Keuchel?
Yeah, I think this is just another spot where it's way too hot, projected to be 90 degrees. I think the strikeouts will be decent for Nola tonight. The Braves lineup they're rolling out strikes out about average, which is a lot higher than normal for them. But run prevention will be an issue here. To put it in reference, Atlanta has a team total of 5.3. That's higher than Minnesota against Daniel Mengden. So it's like Nola, a great pitcher, but not going to be able to overcome this weather.
All right, Adam, thoughts on pitching?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Alex. On FanDuel, Nola's price tag is reasonable at 9,200, but you only have to roster the one pitcher there. He's still more expensive than Paxton. It's still a really tough spot against Atlanta. So while I do think that Nola is better than his season-long numbers, it's not a spot where I really see getting to tonight. And then Keuchel is just someone I don't really roster in DFS. I guess it is worth pointing out that he's 6,200 on FanDuel. That's not the craziest spot, just because we know that he can give you 100 to 110 pitches and maybe limit some runs. But outside of that, in a few lineups, I don't really see getting the pitching here. But I also don't see getting to a ton of hitting, with the exception of some Phillies bats, because they're really cheap. Rhys Hoskins in particular, JT Realmuto in the lineup batting 5th really stand out.
All right. Alex, thoughts on hitters? I know you said it's hot there in Atlanta.
I think Realmuto is a cash lock on DraftKings and Yahoo, just because super good value, only $10 on Yahoo, and you need a catcher. The overall team numbers don't look amazing on either side, but I think they can make some decent contrarian stacks.
Okay. Man, we're moving fast. Adam, is there anything? I know you touched on bats a little bit here. Anybody or any other ideas for this game?
No, pretty much just Hoskins and Realmuto standing out.
All right, so we've got Texas and we've got the Angels. Obviously, game was postponed yesterday following the news of Tyler Skagg's tragic and untimely death. Now you've got the same pitchers on the mound today at Arlington, and the temperatures have not cooled down. As a matter of fact, they've actually risen. It's 92 degrees here at first pitch. You got some wind blowing in, but that has hardly made a difference in globe life. Mike Minor, Jose Suarez. Yesterday, this was the chalkiest game of the slate before it got wiped off the board. How are you approaching it today, now that instead of 5 games, we have 15?
One thing that stands out to me is that the pricing on the Angels increased a bit. Not anything crazy, but Justin Upton going from like 3,800 to 4,300 on DraftKings stands out. They're just not as cheap as they were. You also don't have Andrelton Simmons in the lineup. Minor, not a pitcher that I really love picking on, and with it being a 15-game slate, I'm less inclined to do it than I was yesterday. And then on the other side, Texas with the really high implied run total, it's a perfectly fine spot to stack for the upside. There's not really any question about that against, a young pitcher in Suarez. It's just that as far as individual plays, there aren't that many that stand out. Joey Gallo obviously is really good and hits lefties really well, but he's also expensive. So it's not like you're getting any sort of a discount there. And overall, Texas's lineup is just absolute trash against lefties. So I think that more often than not, I'm going to end up either with a Texas stack or just kind of without them.
Okay. Yeah, and the stack is kind of weird the way it sets up. Josh mentioned it today, like 4 outfielders, and it's a little bit different. There are a few teams that definitely stack a bit nicer, but Jose Suarez is hardly a formidable opponent. So, I mean, there is that. What are your thoughts, Alex, on this game?
I'll start with the. I don't think either pitcher is really in consideration, just because the run production is going to be so high here. The Angels, like at first glance, look stackable, but then I'm looking deeper, and only 5 of the 9 batters are really of fantasy value. So if you stack them up, you're going to have the same stack as everyone else. So that's not something I like to see. Trout, righty versus lefty, I think he's a cash game lock. So he'd make my cash game cut there. Probably one of the best individual plays of the slate. And then the Texas lineup is just lighting up my value metrics here, especially, actually on all 3 sites pretty equally. And the ownership doesn't look as high as it could be, so I like him a lot.
Who did you say was a cash lock?
This guy, Mike Trout, you know him?
Oh, I've heard of him, yes. I didn't hear you said it was.
He tends to be decent in cash games. I mean, 45% on base, 31% ISO. Gotta like those numbers.
No, I'd say he's definitely above average.
Yeah. That's what you pay us for here.
What's that?
That's what they're paying us for, man.
Yeah, exactly. The hard-hitting hot take analysis without any fear of being wrong. Adam, you talked about Texas. Just to get a little bit more into the weeds with the Angels. Yesterday, I was pretty much planning on coming in very underweight on the crazy high ownership they had before the postponement. Mike Minor's just been really good. Like, I know the Angels are one of the best teams, hitting offensive teams in baseball. They absolutely have plenty of pop from the right side of the plate. No Ohtani in the lineup, but nevertheless, it's a good team. But can we talk about Mike Minor for a second? And just the fact that he's gone 13 starts without allowing more than 3 runs. He's done so only twice on the season. He's pitching more than half of his games in terrible parks. He's faced like 60% of his matchups have come against teams with bottom 10 K rates, and he continues to put up like electric numbers night in and night out. What are your thoughts here? Just this matchup, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on it.
Yeah, and I think he's a pretty quality pitcher. I don't think that he's not in like ace category for me. And it's clearly a great park for an Angels team that really doesn't strike out and will put the ball in play. Minor struck out about 24% of hitters this year. So it's not like he's a great strikeout pitcher that's going to override the Angels' inability or lack of strikeouts. He does walk some guys at 8%. His xFIP is almost 2 runs higher than his ERA. His PCRA is about a run higher. So, I mean, the one thing that stands out is he's done a good job of limiting barreled balls. Only 6.4% of balls put in play against Minor have been barreled this season, which is a little bit above average. So I think that he's just not a pitcher that I really look to pick on, but I'm also not like shying away because of the conditions here in Texas. What it really comes down to is just that the Angels lineup is kind of ugly outside of Trout and Upton. I don't really want all that much Pujols at first base. I don't really want all that much $4,100 David Fletcher or lefty Tommy La Stella. It's just a pretty ugly lineup today with the exception of like Trout and Upton.
Yeah, and by the way, I wasn't recommending playing Minor whatsoever. Just throwing out there that he's been very good. It's remarkable that he's allowed 2 home runs in Arlington this year. Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, it means he's going to give up like 12 in the next 2 games.
He's no question going to regress. Like, there's no doubt. I do think he's very good, though. Sure, I'm not going to put them up there with Chris Sale, but I do think he's been very solid. Anything to add on this game, Alex?
Nothing really of importance.
All right. Well, talk to me about Robin Lopez and Matthew Boyd. Lopez, one of the names.
How much NBA news?
Did I say Robin Lopez? Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, what's the news on Robin Lopez? He's like the premier free agent this year.
He's playing with his brother
Yeah,
now.
he's playing with his brother with the Bucks.
Man, that's the worst idea I've ever heard.
I bet you thought there was no news at all on Robin Lopez.
I know, yeah. Like, that's a pleasant surprise. Something good to talk about here.
Oh, that's great. I used to do when we used to switch over from basketball to baseball for like the first month of the podcast, and we go position by position. I'd always say like, all right, let's talk about centers.
I'm very well aware.
What?
I said I'm very well aware.
Oh, is that right, guy? Okay. Yeah. So it's tough. Although we're like 3 months into the season, so there's no excuses. Ronaldo Lopez, Matthew Boyd, Alex. What's crazy about Lopez is that he actually has a 25% K rate against righties. He has done a very good job of striking them out. He's also allowing 2.2 home runs per 9 to righties. So when you talk about a double-edged sword, it doesn't get much more so than Ronaldo Lopez here facing what has he got? 6 righties because Candelario's back in the lineup, but still 6 righties and 2 bad lefties. Kristen Stewart's the only semi-formidable guy from the left side. Like, is Ronaldo Lopez to you worth the ownership he's receiving?
Oh, I think he is. I mean, super, super hot in Chicago today, like 90 degrees. But the strikeout matchup's good, and the price tag is good, so I like him, but I also like taking the leverage stack with the Tigers if he's going to be high owned.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of Tigers too, because like I said, 2.2 home runs per 9, Adam, and 25% strikeout. It's really one that could go either way tonight.
Yeah, no question. And he really, while his strikeout numbers are much better against righties than lefties, he has been really bad against both in terms of allowing power. So you get, Nick Castellanos and Kristen Stewart as the two that really stand out to me that I'd like to get to. But Jacoby Jones leading off is a good fastball hitter, and Lopez pretty much lives and dies on his fastball. Cabrera is cheap. It's a spot where if Lopez is going to be 30% owned, I have no issue getting to some Tigers, whether it be mini stacks or full stacks or whatever. But I will also be getting a lot of Ronaldo Lopez because not only are the Tigers predominantly right-handed and strike out a lot, they also have one of the lowest walk percentages against right-handed pitching. And that's been an issue for Lopez this year as well. So, hopefully he can keep the pitch count down a little bit, can keep the extra base runners off base and, limit production that way. So, it's certainly a risky spot, and rostering a popular Ronaldo Lopez is never a great feeling, but I'm going to get there.
Yeah, I think we all are. It's not the greatest feeling, like you said, but he does have – I mean, I'm pretty sure he's pitched like 12 innings against the Tigers this season. And 12 innings and 22 strikeouts. It's insane. Absolutely insane.
I mean, they turned Ariel Jurado into a strikeout pitcher.
Yes, they did. They'll turn anyone into a strikeout pitcher. What are you doing with Matthew Boyd, Adam?
I expect to get to a lot of him, especially I'm looking at our ownership now, and I do not. Oh, there he is. So he's at 50. He's projected for 15% on DraftKings right now. Charlie Morton's at 30. I have them projected like half a point apart, with Morton being a little bit higher. I obviously love Morton, but I also really love Matt Boyd. I think he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. He has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 30.8%, but he also has the lowest walk percentage at 4.8%. Obviously, that gives him the best K-minus BB percentage at 26%, which is about 3 points higher than any other pitcher on the slate. He has the best PCRA on the slate as well, I believe just ahead of Charlie Morton. And he's just been really, really good. He's striking out guys from both sides of the plate. The only thing that really stands out as a negative is that he has allowed 8.7% of balls in play to be barreled, which is why he's had some issues with home runs, but not a ton of right-handed power in this lineup. I think if you wanted to look to one-offs from the White Sox, you're looking at Jose Abreu, you're looking at Eloy Jimenez, possibly Moncada, but I would put him behind those other two. But in general, I just think it's a good spot for Boyd.
Okay. Do you have any interest in Boyd, Alex? It's a position where you've got like 5 guys in good matchups that are around that same price point. But Boyd's been phenomenal this year.
Yeah, he's a good pitcher, especially like his price tag of 43 on Yahoo, where he's definitely in the mix. But the team total for Chicago today, the White Sox, is 5, and you're paying 10K for a pitcher that has one of the has a pretty high run total against him. So I'd rather just go to a pitcher who's like Morton. I think the team total of the team he's facing is like 3.6, so that's a huge gap. I think that Boyd is going to have trouble like getting a lot of points other than strikeouts.
Is their run total really up to 5?
That's what I have it at. I mean, the over-under is 9.5, and Chicago is actually like a favorite in this game.
Wow. That is something. All right. Well, it looks like it's definitely come up throughout the day, too. You talked about, well, I think we can move on. I think we've covered it all. We've got 6 games to go. Houston and Colorado. Adam, we have, okay, so Herman Marquez, and then not on the slate on DraftKings, but on the slate on Yahoo and FanDuel, which is something you rarely see. Jose Urquidy, please, I'm not getting that pronunciation right, and if I do, it was completely accidental. Let's talk about him first, because his numbers at AAA were insane, and I just don't know how. First of all, making his first start in Colorado against a slew of talented lefties. Blackman, Dahl, Story not a lefty, but he's back in the lineup. Murphy, McMahon. Is that Jose Hernandez now?
Yeah, I think it's like Hernandez or Urquidy or something.
Yeah, I saw. Okay, I just want to make sure, because now I'm seeing. Alex, do you know what the situation is on this one?
It's the same guy.
Are we saying that he's on every site and just a different name? I missed it.
Adam, it is the same guy.
Yeah, I saw it written out somewhere as like Hernandez Urquidy, and then on other spots. Yeah.
DraftKings doesn't have him anyway, though, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. That clears up the confusion. Is it a hyphenated name? Is that why?
That's how I saw it. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's like, remember when Fausto Carmona was like Roberto Hernandez or something?
Yeah. A little different. That one is extreme. But anyway, you know what? I think I feel more comfortable calling him Jose Hernandez anyway. So it's a lot easier not to look stupid. His K rate, his XFIP, everything was solid at AAA. But I mean, he's got to pitch at Coors today.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, and it's always hard to figure it out from minor leagues, especially when they're at the lower levels. But I wouldn't be surprised if he made some kind of massive adjustment this year, because he's not a highly regarded prospect. He's
not even in their top 20.
Yeah, he never posted great numbers. I mean, up until last year, he hadn't pitched above high A. Last season, he had a 20.5% strikeout percentage at advanced A, and then he comes into this year, goes up to Double A, strikes out 30%, gets called up to Triple A, strikes out 37%. He probably made some sort of change, especially with it being the Astros system and how good they are at that. So he's probably better than his prospect status, and then some projection systems are going to give him credit for. I would have interest if this game were somewhere other than Colorado, but with it being in Colorado on a full 15-game slate, even on the sites where he is in the player pool, I'm not looking to get there, and I'm still going to Colorado bats because, he probably is a pretty decent pitcher, especially because he was putting up those numbers at AAA and the PCL as well, which is about as comparable as you're going to get to pitching in Colorado. But you just have, a Colorado team with about a 7 implied run total, tons of power in the lineup. Trevor Story's back at an incredibly cheap price tag on DraftKings in particular at $4,500. I'll take my chances with the Rockies.
Yeah, I think so too. Alex, pitchers, what do you see in these guys? Marquez, obviously a very good pitcher going up against a quality Houston team. I was hoping that they'd find a way to get Alvarez in the lineup today. That's not the case. I actually thought 5K or 51 on DraftKings was too cheap based on his power and abilities going into Coors Field, but he's not in the lineup. So still, you've got 2 good teams, 1 good pitcher, One pitcher who I think Adam's right had to have made some adjustments because before it was just a decent slider or a decent change and a below average slider and a low to mid 90s fastball. Talk to me. Evaluate this game for us, Alex.
I think with pitchers, like the current year data is really, especially with strikeouts, it converges pretty quickly. So I think that we can just take that as kind of a fact of how he's going to be as far as strikeouts this year. He hasn't been amazing at run prevention. At 3.6 xFIP on the year in AAA, and I mean, I actually do have some interest on FanDuel where he's 5,500. I haven't projected to be like a decent pitcher tonight, but I don't know if I'll end up making it there. But it is kind of an interesting play with the leverage. Of course, that 7.3 team total is pretty scary. So, I mean, he's probably going to get good strikeout numbers in the majors, but I think on all three sites, these teams have to be the top projected teams of the night. The ownership is going to be where it gets sticky because it takes Trevor Story, for example, like one of the highest owned players of the night. And then for Houston on DraftKings, they're just super low price for their offensive potential tonight, so I think they're going to be super high owned. I do like Houston on FanDuel, where you have to really sacrifice a lot to get there. So I think that is a little bit better for ownership. You have to be like smarter with your lineup construction, but I don't really see like a tremendous edge in just like stacking up one side of this game.
Josh just made such a bad joke in Slack chat.
I'm shocked.
Josh's a funny dude. This is just an awful joke. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious, but the rest of chat, not so much. Adam, it's obviously a big game. What are your thoughts? We talked about Colorado. We talked about Jose Hernandez, Urquidy, Esteban. What are your thoughts on the Houston bats?
Yeah, I'm there with Alex. I have enough respect for Marquez where if Houston's going to be really popular, I can find other spots to get to out of the 29 teams on the slate. But at the same time, Coors Field in the summer with juiced baseballs, I don't really care how good you are as a pitcher. You're still facing a lot of really good hitters here with Springer, Altuve, Bregman, Brantley, guys that don't strike out. They put the ball in play, which we know is the reason that Coors is such a great hitter's park. You know, it's not that it's a great home run park, you know, it's above average, but it's that if you put the ball in play, you just have such a good chance of getting on base and stringing together big innings. So I like Houston. It's just that, you know, I do have enough respect for Marquez that if they're going to be one of the highest owned stacks, I don't mind looking elsewhere.
Okay. We proceed. Cleveland, Kansas City. I'll stick with you, Adam. Trevor Bauer, Jake Junis. Obviously a pretty appealing spot for Bauer. His last start was 6 2/3 innings, 1 run, and 12 Ks against this Kansas City team. He has looked a whole lot better lately, save for one rough start against the Detroit Tigers. And Trevor Bauer, interestingly enough, just based on, you know, your Charlie Mortons and such, is projected at 8% ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Trevor Bauer, 2% ownership. And finally, on our sponsor, Yahoo, at 11% ownership. Let's talk here about Bauer because he's going entirely overlooked. He is expensive, of course, but he's going overlooked as well.
I mean, I think that he's appealing for ownership reasons, kind of like the same way that David Price is.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be surprising at all to see a good game. He's certainly a good pitcher. He's been disappointing overall this year. But one thing that stands out as far as, you know, he does have like a high floor because he throws more pitches than any other pitcher in baseball. He's over his last 10 starts, he has more games with over 120 pitches thrown than with less than 100 pitches. So for one, that just means he's going to eat innings. But two, it means when he's having a good start, you don't have to worry about him being at like 100 pitches in the 8th inning and not getting a complete game because he's going to just keep going out there. So, you know, that's working in his favor. It's just that he's so much more expensive than Morton and, you know, Boyd and Paxton and these other guys. I have Bauer projected as the 3rd highest scorer on DraftKings. So, you know, I have him projected well. It's just that from a point per dollar standpoint, it's a pretty suboptimal play, but that keeps his ownership down and makes him appealing there. One negative for him is that Mondesi's back in the lineup for Kansas City. Not only is Mondesi just a good player, but Bauer's been much, much better against righties than lefties this year, and that gets one more lefty into the lineup for Kansas City. So overall, if you can get to Bauer, I don't have an issue with it, but it's just somewhere where I'm not sure how much I'm actually going to get to because he's more expensive than a lot of guys that I like.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, I did forget to mention this. I think it's worth discussing or just mentioning, Adam. The one thing about Charlie Morton is he's been ridiculously efficient, but when you look at his pitch counts, 86, 82, 88, 106, 87, 83, 94, 95. Like if he goes 7 innings with 85 pitches, he's not coming back out.
Right. It's been the biggest issue with Morton as far as like comparing him to these, top level pitchers. I think the Orioles will help out with that a little bit, but it's certainly a concern, especially when you have someone like Bauer on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, you guys must have seen Snell got pulled after he had 80 pitches and 30 something fantasy points, and he got pulled. So any Tampa Bay pitcher, you got to be pretty worried.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so too. If I had to guess, Charlie Morton's got to be like top 5 in pitches per inning this year. He's got to be up there, right? You would think so.
Probably.
Yeah,
he strikes out a ton of guys and he walks a ton of guys.
Yeah, well, he's 13th best I meant lowest, not highest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course. Look at him, dude. He's going 84 pitches and 7 innings every start.
And I guess nobody gets on base, but
right. Yeah, 15.9 pitches per inning. Really, really low. Okay. Alex, what are you thinking here with Bauer? And we'll get to Jake Junis and Cleveland hitters in a second.
Bauer, I mean, in a good spot, but not a great one. Kansas City is going to be super hot today. Again, 90-degree game. They don't strike out very much. So I think those are really driving my interest to other places. But I mean, he has a high projection, so I could see it, especially on a condensed slate. But I really like Cleveland bats today. The team
Me
total.
too.
Yeah, team total 5.6, and got some really good value plays. So I think I like that.
Yeah, I mean, their prices are really discounted, right? When you look at some of the options on this Cleveland team, they've been overpriced for a while, but Santana reasonably priced, Kipnis dirt cheap, Ramirez super cheap, Lindor is way cheaper than he should be. Mercado isn't through the roof anymore. Adam, the Cleveland Indian bats are definitely coming in at a relative discount.
Yeah, I really like Cleveland because Junis doesn't miss a lot of bats. The weather's favorable for hitting. Junis gives up home runs, but also I think it's a really easy team to be contrarian with, and they also let you pay up at other spots because they're really cheap. Lindor and Santana are the most expensive, and they're cheaper than they have been in a while. But then you look to the bottom of this lineup, and you have Bobby Bradley hitting 8th. This is a guy with like a 30+% strikeout percentage and a ton of power, facing a pitcher with only about a 20% strikeout percentage who gives up home runs at 3,300 on DraftKings, batting 8th. So not going to get a lot of ownership just because he's hitting 8th, but then also the same position as Carlos Santana. So not even going to get a ton of ownership within Cleveland stacks, but has a ton of power. So I like him. I like Jake Bauers. And then obviously I like the top of the order as well.
Okay. I agree with you. Do you guys, because I have to ask, any interest in Royals bats, or shall we move on to the next one?
There's some decent prices, but it's just you can't love them going against Bauer.
Yeah, smaller slate, I'd have more interest.
Yeah, it hardly makes sense here. All right, Oakland, Minnesota. Alex, take this one away. Not a game that I'm finding much interest in. Maybe you found something that we should discuss between Odorizzi and Daniel Mengden at O.co.
Yeah, I think Mengden's just not a very good pitcher. Odorizzi has great strikeout numbers on the year, but the strikeout matchup isn't that good. And the team total of Oakland is almost 5, so I don't really like going there. As far as bats, not a whole lot of great values, but the ownership is super low, especially on Minnesota. So I like them as a contrarian stack. And then for cash, I think Chris Davis at 3.5K on DraftKings and 11 on Yahoo. It might not make the final cut, but overall, a really good play.
Are you finding anything in this game you like, Adam?
I think matchup-wise, Oakland's really interesting because Odorizzi has been reverse splits for most of his career. And so far this season, his expected WOBA to righties and his expected ISO to righties are over 100 points higher than what he's actually given up. The issue is that this is a slate where there's a ton of games where it's 90 degrees in favorable hitting spots. And then here you have like 65, 70 degrees in Oakland. So it makes it a really low probability spot that they actually work out. But I do have interest getting there as one-offs at least. You know, if Davis is in the lineup, he's really cheap. Laureano's cheap. Kana's cheap. So some interest, but not as much as I would if they were like in a different park or better weather.
Okay. Let's move on then. LA Dodgers, Arizona Diamondbacks, Adam, Ross Stripling, Taylor Clark. I think one of my favorite teams today is the Dodgers. Just zero faith in Clark's ability to silence these hitters. Dodger Stadium is more friendly to lefties. You just have an incredible amount of good hitters on this Dodgers team. Peterson is not expensive. And now you might look at it. Look, I actually think this sets up nicely because you've got Matt Beattie batting third, Verdugo second, Bellinger 4, Muncy 5, Edwin Rios, another lefty. It isn't to say that this is their most potent lineup, but there are a lot of lefties, and you're not really overpaying outside of Bellinger and Muncy. These guys are pretty inexpensive, or at least very reasonably priced.
Yeah, no question. And I have little to no faith in Taylor Clark being a major league pitcher.
Right.
Against lefties this year, he struck out 14%. He's allowed a 399 expected WOBA, 278 expected ISO. His actual numbers are just as bad at 415 and 325. So this is a guy not striking out lefties and getting absolutely bludgeoned by them. And now you have 6 lefties in the top 7. They all, with the exception of Matt Beattie, have monstrous power. And 4 out of the 6 are already, legitimately good major league hitters. So really, really tough spot for Clark. They also just saw him within the last couple of weeks, so that can't hurt either.
Yep, we are on the same page, man. Alex, you like the Dodgers today?
Yeah, Stripling, I kind of think he might be really under the radar, like GPP play, because he didn't go very deep last game. But if he has a full workload today, he'd have a nice spot. I don't think it's fair to really project that, so that's why he's kind of like that boomer bust kind of play. Like maybe you'll get a fortuitous occurrence and he'll go deeper than expected, but probably not someone I'll get to. The Dodgers, it really takes a 15 game slate for a team with a 5.7 team total to go under the radar. So I think if you're looking for a stack that's really good and maybe contrarian, that's probably where I'd go. One piece of advice I might have is that Jock Peterson leading off is projected to be 21% on FanDuel and 19% on Yahoo. But he's the highest owned Dodgers bat by far, so you can get a lot of leverage over other people if you leave him out of your lineup.
Okay. Yeah, there's no question he's going to be super popular. Do you have any interest, Adam, in Arizona hitters? My guess is no, but
no, I have a lot of respect for Stripling. I agree with what Alex said about him too. Like I have trouble projecting him for more than like 75 pitches here, but it's like the perfect example of a spot where if you're just willing to admit that you really don't actually know a whole lot about what's going to happen in the future, that he does give you an opportunity to be different than the field and get a little bit of upside.
Okay. We continue on. 2 games left. Alex, San Diego, San Francisco, Matt Strom, Tyler Beattie. Pretty interesting spot here. What do you think of these guys?
I like them. I think you can definitely go to either guy, especially on DraftKings and Yahoo, where you get 2 pitchers because they're not going to be your top guys of the night. But San Diego is a pretty decent. I mean, the weather isn't going to be 90 degrees on any day of the year, so you got to like that. And both teams strike out. San Diego at a higher than average rate. San Francisco at just a little bit lower than average, but a little bit more than some of the lineups we've seen. I suppose we probably don't have the lineups yet for this game, but going off the projected lineups I'm seeing. On the other hand, the bats are pretty cheap, so I wouldn't rule them out either. So I think Strom would be the guy that based on our current ownership, is really low owned on DraftKings at 6,900 because the Giants just are. They have below average power, below average pretty much everything. So you gotta like that and favorable pitching conditions, and the price is very affordable.
All right. Yeah, I mean, Adam, I mentioned him earlier in the show. Tyler Beatty isn't that great, but what stands out to me is one thing that's probably surprising to most. Against right-handers this season, he's actually striking them out at a pretty high clip. 25% strikeouts against right-handers this season. He does walk batters, no question, but very average to slightly below average or average walk rate for the Padres. 125 ISO to righties for Tyler Beatty. Obviously, that xFIP isn't pretty, but it's not horrible given his price point. I mentioned him, and Alex gave us some insight there as well. But not because I think he's great, but because the Padres have the highest K rate in the league. He's striking righties out. But more so, you would think that with all of those other cheap pitchers that are going to collect a decent amount of ownership, Beatty looks to be in the single digits.
Yeah, I'm there with you. And then one other thing that stands out is that Manny Machado won't be in the lineup tonight. He's finally suspended for a game. So that takes one of the lowest strikeout percentages and one of the best hitters out of the lineup. You know, you mentioned Beatty's strikeout numbers against righties are really good. His walk percentage is still terrible, but the Padres as a team have one of the lowest walk percentages, and taking Machado out of the lineup won't help that either. So it really sets up about as favorably as it can for Beatty. And what it really comes down to is that Reynaldo Lopez is in a great spot against the Tigers. He's going to be really popular and for good reason, but really they shouldn't project, or their range of outcomes really isn't very different. And so getting a lower owned Beatty in better pitching conditions is, pretty appealing. And Strom, they're in one of the best run prevention spots, not a good strikeout spot because the Giants don't strike out a ton, and Strom's not a great strikeout pitcher, but pretty likely to be able to, just navigate his way through this lineup. As far as bats go, though, I do think that Franmil Reyes is still underpriced. Francisco Mejia, if he's in the lineup, is probably a good contrarian catcher play. And then on the other side, Matt Strom has allowed 10.7% of balls in play this season to be barreled. You get really cheap price tags on Tyler Austin and Evan Longoria, who do have power from the right side and do get a ballpark boost going from San Francisco to San Diego.
All right. Well, looks like we're all on the same page with this one. Alex, do you want to talk bats?
I think it's more of a night slate spot, but I think the prices on San Francisco are looking pretty good, especially in Yahoo where there's a lot of minimum price guys. And San Diego is priced super high on DraftKings and Yahoo, but on FanDuel they are affordable.
All right. Last one here. Let's do it. Adam or Alex, we'll close it out to start with you. St. Louis, Seattle, Jack Flaherty, you're getting him at a discounted cost. He is going up against the Seattle team that's probably going to run out. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have the lineup. What do they have? 6 lefties in the lineup today. Take it for what it's worth. I'm not going to pretend that they're great lefties, but the 4, 5, 6 isn't terrible, and he's been a whole lot better against righties, particularly from a strikeout standpoint. I get the love for Flaherty, but I might not be as excited about him as I am for some other pitchers. What are your thoughts on Flaherty? Is he going to be one of your highest owned pitchers today?
Yeah, just going off the numbers, on DraftKings, he'll probably be like one of the more chalky pitchers. Just 'cause he's a good value. He's facing a lineup that's not that good. The strikeout matchup isn't any better than average, but the team total of 4.4 is pretty low, and I think that you gotta like his chances tonight. On FanDuel, he's a little bit harder to get to because it's still a one-pitcher site, but still playable. And Wade LeBlanc on the other side, I'm not really on him just because he doesn't strike out guys a lot.
All right. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, Flaherty is the thing with Flaherty is that he's a little underpriced even based on his median stats, and that gives him a lot of room for error. But his splits are pretty drastic. He struck out about 10% fewer lefties than righties, 21% lefties to 31% righties. He's allowed a 250 ISO to lefties, 360 WOBA. And, while the Mariners aren't great, they do have power with Vogelbach in particular, but JP Crawford's hit well. Malik Smith's not bad. Narvaez is an above average hitter. Seager's fine. So it's not like it's the easiest matchup here. And Flaherty has had issues with lefties. So it wouldn't be surprising if he struggles a bit, but I'll still be getting to him at that price tag. On the other side, I think the Cardinals are one of the most underpriced teams on the slate. It's not a great hitting conditions, but like on DraftKings, the entire team is below 4K. Paul DeJong's really good. Tyler O'Neill's got a ton of power. Goldschmidt's 3,600 against a lefty after his first at bat. So certainly have interest in the Cardinals.
All right. Yeah, the pricing is just insane.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in context, St. Louis on Yahoo, they have a 30% chance of being my top value stack of the night. They're just like,
wow,
all $7 to $10 is crazy.
Yeah, that is bizarre. Top stacks, boys. Alex, who do you have? But give us a Pirates type team. Give us one for AOS anti-optimizer stacks. Go.
Ooh, I got to pull my tool here. That's why I designed it, so I can give you guys my top stacks.
Well, that's just wonderful.
All right, so I like the Cubs is kind of under the radar spot. Definitely projected higher than the Pirates were, but it's a big slate. And on FanDuel, I really like Boston as my contrarian spend spot.
Adam?
I mean the Dodgers and the Indians.
All right, that'll do it for us. Live Before Lock coming up next. Jake and Chris Randone taking you up till 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Hey, before you head out, if you like the show, appreciate the content, and you want to support us at Awesemo and on the YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us out a lot, and we greatly appreciate it. And I heard you win more if you thumbs up the video, so that's cool too. All right, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. It'll be hump day. It'll be Alex's last day on the deeper dive for the week. And then Adam and I will close it out with you Thursday and Friday. Good luck tonight. We'll catch you back here tomorrow on the deeper dive.